Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA Draft and the Motor City Cruise.
Blake, man, I feel like I should be wearing a party hat, have a kazoo or something to blow on right now. Like, Pistons basketball's back. I know they lost, but it was a good game. It was a competitive game. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm happy the NBA's back and rolling. This is going to be a fun season. I can feel it, so I'm just excited.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a sour taste in the mouths after how that one ended. I mean, stuff that was good to take away, stuff that was not so good. And I mean, it's tough to keep making excuses and keep saying this is a young team and they need to figure out how to close games. First game with a lot of new faces on the roster, so you don't want to see it end like that. It was super tough, but also that's a good team they played, a team that just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, yeah, a little bit expected. I can't say I was shocked that the game ended the way it did, but definitely disappointing when there's so much excitement for game one. Cade's cooking the way he is in the second half and lose it that way. But hey, they're back at it again tomorrow, Friday night, if you're listening to this, against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So hopefully it's a better outcome with that one.
You know, let's just start there, actually, because I've seen some of that. I've heard some of that. The idea that, you know, they're young and they need to learn how to close games. And I just want to point out that they won 14 games last season, and this is largely the same core. So you don't lose that many games in a single season with all of them being close. I mean, I kind of think this is, I don't know, it's kind of crude, but at this point, like, winning close games, learning how to win close games kind of is skipping a step. These guys don't even know how to be in close games yet. And so I think that in a way that Pacers game was actually a step forward. They looked like an NBA basketball team. They were competitive. That's a very good Pacers team. They had to make some adjustments mid-game. I mean, the first half wasn't just Cade being off. Nembhard was giving him some fits there with some really tight pressure on ball. They were forced to go to Ivy to initiate more often, even with Cade out on the floor. So, I mean, there was a lot that happened in this game that I think is really good and will end up being really good, especially how all of that culminated into what ended up being a very close basketball game. Like, I do think that that's a win for this young team. Not even learning how to win those close games, but just consistently be in them against teams that are better than you.
Yeah, for sure. And in the 28 game losing streak last season, that one, game after game kind of just felt like even if they were out on a lead, it wasn't going to stay. Something was going to happen. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong. I think they got,
I mean, I swear they blew like a 30-point lead to the Blazers at one point, right? Like, last year was like wild.
That. Yeah, and try to put that in the back of the brain. But yeah, I think that got a little bit better toward the end of the season, especially after the trade deadline when it parted ways with some players that weren't helping out, brought in some guys that more complemented the team, some for the very short term. And I mean, the one in Simone Fontecchio that's still here. So yeah, it's going to be, I feel like it will need some time. And obviously the schedule doesn't help out, starting with 6 games in a row against all playoff teams. So we knew it was going to be tough. It's just, when you have winnable games in those stretch, like the opener against the Pacers was, it's tough to see them not hold on to it. I mean, there were also some pretty silly mistakes. I mean, defense wasn't great in the second half. There were also the 2 technicals on Ron Holland. I mean, I think the one in the first half at the end was his fault. The one where he checked out and then checked back in. I wonder if an assistant said something to him. Like, I didn't think that one was fully his fault, but things like that end up costing you in the end. The last stretch was bad, but I also thought that there were some other things before that led up to that point that shouldn't have happened. Hopefully it's things that you can clean up, especially if it's Ron Holland, like those things, he's probably not going to make those mistakes again. So that's good to get it out of the way in game one, but there's other things to figure out too.
Bobby Bucket says, howdy, what's up? Happy to have you guys here. If you guys are watching in the live chat, obviously leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff really helps us grow, helps us out. And of course, send in your live questions as well. We should have some time to get into those later on in the episode.
Gotta shout out Bobby Buckets, new DBB writer. He's
sir.
Killing it, having some pieces on the site and doing some film breakdowns too. I saw that over on Twitter and his YouTube. So be sure to hit up his YouTube, DetroitBadBoys.com, for everything we got going on. Everyone on the staff was like pumping out content this week. So be sure to tune. Shameless plug.
Of course, I mean, we have to. It's a growing family at this point of Detroit Bad Boys, and you wouldn't want it any other way. That's where you guys need to be going to get all your Pistons content. So, including this podcast, but also all the other great, game recaps, just threads where you could chat with other Pistons fans. It's an awesome website. We're happy to be a part of it, and of course, shout out to our leader there, Sean Corp, right? But where do you want to start with this game? So there were a few standouts. It was a 115-109 loss to the Pacers at home. A couple of guys that stood out. Cade Cunningham, 28 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds. Most of that coming in the second half. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a nice night, 14 on 4 of 9 shooting. And you brought up Ron Holland. I mean, his stats aren't going to pop off the page or anything, but I did think he made a positive impact in the game when he was in. So, where do you want to go first, I guess?
Let's start with Cade. I mean, I thought he was the biggest bright spot. I mean, there were some other bright spots that we can get into later, but I just thought, excuse me, Cade taking over and just cooking the way he did in the second half was huge, especially after he started slow in the first half. I think he, excuse me, sorry everyone. I think he had a high number of assists in the first half, so it was nice to see that going when the shot wasn't falling. He was having a tough time with Nembhard, like you mentioned, but man, what he did in the second half and the third quarter specifically was pretty incredible. And I think the biggest question with Cade is like, one, can he lead a team that makes the playoffs, eventually contends, but also could he potentially make that jump into being an all-star this year? I mean, I think some of that depends on what the Pistons are doing, what their record is, but if you look at just his performance from last night in the opener against the Pacers, I feel like that gives me hope and optimism that he could be an all-star as soon as this season.
Yeah, it was really, really great to see him respond from that slow start. Like we said, it wasn't just that he was off, his shot wasn't falling, stuff like that. It was a slow start that was created by the Indiana Pacers. I mean, Miles Turner's length was giving him some fits when he was getting to the rim, and he was struggling to get around Andrew Nembhard, as Nembhard's a real quick defender. He's a very good defender. He was pressing up under Cade Cunningham pretty much the entire first half. But then there was a very awesome blob play that got Cade open. I think that was about the 10-minute mark or so in the third quarter. And Cade just gets this wide open pull up from the middle of the lane. And it was just that was the end of it from there. He was hot from that point on. So it's just really nice to see the response, right? We've seen Cade have cold stretches before, and sometimes it seems like it kind of taints the entire game. And that was not the case here. The Pacers were keying on him. This was a Pacers team, if you remember last year, that really couldn't handle Cade Cunningham at all, right? So to see him kind of game one, be keyed on, be focused on so much that it is kind of ruining your night offensively, and then respond like that in the second half, that was great to see. One more note that I had on Cade Cunningham that I was really impressed with was actually in that first half. You mentioned the assists, right? I think he had 6 in the first half, if I'm remembering correctly. He only had 2 turnovers this entire game. And I bring that up not because Cade had turnover issues last year, though that's kind of part of it. I bring it up
It's
because,
we started the season with that concern. It
yeah,
was like he was like right around the top of the league, and that was a big talking point last year. And it
yeah,
improved, but it was a definite point of conversation.
yeah, it really was. And this would have been a game where in the past we would have seen Cade have more than two turnovers. In the past, Cade has really struggled with quicker guys getting underneath him and pressuring the ball. All right. And these were those turnovers where it just looked like his handle would get loose sometimes, right? And there's no rhyme or reason for it, but he just for some reason struggled with it every now and again. And that did not happen against the Pacers. His handle was tight. He had the ball on a string. And I was just very impressed that he made that improvement, or at least it looks like he made that improvement over the offseason. That could be really huge if teams can't even pressure him and cause turnovers like they did last year. If he's got a counter to that just by being a little bit stronger with the ball, I think that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well. I mean, it'll be interesting to get a few more games under our belt and maybe see Cade what he does against some teams that are more known for their defense. I mean, Indiana definitely knows that that is the next step they have to take and not be so focused on what's going on offense, even though they're an incredible offensive team. Like last night, the Pacers had 10 more stocks than the Pistons did. So that's a little that's a different conversation. But in terms of Cade as like the primary scorer, the primary initiator, just the guy, I thought he looked great. He looked every bit of the part. But yeah, I would be interested to monitor his like assist to turnover after 5, 10 games, just to see where it's at and going up against some other teams that are more known for defense has a tough assignment on him. So something to keep an eye out for. But I think Cade has made a huge improvement after like what we were talking about at the beginning of last year and really trying to limit those turnovers. I don't think all of those turnovers were his fault last year, but it was definitely something like you don't want your lead guy to average 5 turnovers a game. Cade's probably going to turn the ball over some just because of what's expected of him, but I thought he did a good job based on what he's asked to do and will need to do moving forward.
Let's get a review of the year three guys. So pick your poison. Who do you want to go to first, Ivy or Duran?
Um, I what stood out to me as far as something new is Jaden Ivey's like package at the rim, just like what he is able to, I mean, he had some crazy finishes and stuff. And when he was a
That like
rookie,
windmill scoop layup moving to the opposite side of the basket while avoiding a charge attempt while in the air was nuts. That was nuts.
I don't know how he did that, but like it wasn't even just that. It's like when he went up to the rim, it felt like he could adjust and really do whatever he wanted to, and maybe it would result in a foul. Like he did a great job of getting to the line. He led the team in free throw attempts yesterday. So I thought that was something noticeable that was maybe was there a little bit in year two for him, but I thought it really stood out as something that he made an improvement with. And like there's not a lot of players in the league who can do what he did. And also what we heard from JB Bickerstaff on how he wanted to use Jaden Ivey, get him the ball on the run in movement more. I thought we saw that and it really played to his ability. I mean, it wasn't, he had 17 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. It was a solid game, but I don't think it was anything close to the best Jaden Ivey game that we'll see this year. And just combine that with how he's able to get to the stripe and what he can do at the rim. I think that's something we'll keep seeing get better over time too.
Yeah, and that touch around the rim should continue to get better too. I mean, for as good as he was, he did smoke one layup that I can remember where he just absolutely toasted Matherin. Got to the rim, got a nice little extension where he was just alone right at the front of the rim for a layup and left it short. Now, I mean, Miles Turner was behind him. I think he was trying to draw a foul, but still, that's one that he really should have made. I know he had 9 free throws, 7 of 9. I mean, I guess you wish that was 8 or 9 of 9, right? But I can't complain too much for the 7. Yeah, I thought this was a really, really good Jaden Ivey night. What I thought was interesting was, even though he played less minutes than Tobias Harris, it felt like he was a little more featured. I wonder if that's going to be consistent moving forward, or if this was more of a product of how the Pacers were really pressuring Cade Cunningham early on in the game, usually right around half court, to slow down his ability to initiate right away, as evidenced by the 9 free throw attempts. So Harris played more minutes than Ivy did, 36-31. They both took 13 field goals, but the fact that Ivy had 9 free throw attempts means that he basically had 4 additional shot attempts, right, that were just fouls that he was getting free throws for. So I don't know. I'm going to be really intrigued to see how that shakes out against the Cavs. The Cavs don't quite have the guard defenders that the Pacers seem to with Nembhard there, or at least I can't think of one off the top of my head. So I think that game might be pretty telling to see if this is the hierarchy moving forwards or not.
Yeah, and Jonathan Schwartz mentioned in the chat about TJ McConnell having Jaden Ivey's number. Like, I was
Matherin
pretty.
got him once or twice too.
Yeah, I mean TJ McConnell, what he did last night was pretty crazy. I wasn't totally surprised by that either, especially after what he did in the playoffs. But yeah, the defense with Ivy is certainly a different story. Like, I didn't think it was great, especially in the second half. He's not going to be your premier perimeter defender by any means, but you hope he can help out a bit there. I just think offensively, he flashed some things that I knew he was capable of, but I didn't like. It just seemed like his bag got a little bit deeper over the offseason. And if he's able to like contort his body and do different things as he goes up towards the rim, I think that'll be a huge benefit, will result in more free throw attempts. And key criticism of him as he was coming into the league his rookie year, he kind of would head towards the rim without a plan, really. And I think that he's really improved in that sense too. I mean, he only had 1 turnover and 4 assists last night. So not no like huge turnover concerns there or anything like that. So I'm interested to see that develop for Ivy as well. I don't see any reason it is just a flash for 1 game or anything like that. So hopefully it'll stay the course and we'll see him used a much better than he was last season.
And to that point that you brought up with the aggressiveness, I still thought there were 2 or 3 fast break or semi-transition possessions that he looked a little bit hesitant. The majority of the game, I really liked how Ivy was attacking. I really liked his mindset. It seemed like he, like you said, he did have a plan. He was going to the rim with intent to make a play, be that a layup or a pass or a kick out, something like that. But there were, like I said, 2 or 3 of those semi-transition plays where he didn't. He was kind of aimless, didn't know what to do, and it showed. He actually made a layup out of one of those, so that was fine. All's well that ends well. But I only bring that up to say, again, there's still room for improvement here. I thought that this was a pretty good game, all in all, for Jaden Ivey, and he still had room where he really could have gotten better. On the defensive side, something else that was kind of interesting, it looked like they started Tim Hardaway Jr. in some part to kick Cade out to the wing defensively. It looked like Cade was on Naismith the majority of the night, which I kind of like, but I thought that was interesting. It was Ivy for the most part. It seemed like checking Halliburton, at least for long periods.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be interested to see if Tim Hardaway Jr. it remains in that starting spot at least while Asar Thompson is out waiting to get cleared from the league, and once Thompson is back, like, is that spot earmarked for him? Do you like maybe insert a Simone Fontecchio into the starting lineup now that you have Asar and his defense in the second unit as like the first one off the bench? But yeah, I think the ideal situation defensively for Cade is like he could, but you don't need him to check the opponent's primary guy. Hopefully make his job a little bit easier on the defensive end of the floor, based off of like what he's asked to do on offense and just be that primary guy. So yeah, I thought he was used in an interesting way. It was something a little bit different, but I mean, I'm all for it moving forward. I think just the lineups and the rotation might be a little bit fluid while Asar Thompson is out.
Yeah, and I thought Tim Hardaway Jr. had a pretty good game. He's really streaky as a
Yeah.
shooter. He was on against the Pacers. He made 4 threes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 threes. He was 4 for 7. That's a really, really good shooting night. And I didn't think he was bad defensively either. I don't think he was really a positive, but it seemed like for the most part he was tasked with Nemhard, who's not exactly an offensive juggernaut by any stretch. So it was a nice neutral game defensively for Tim Hardaway Jr., which I think is a win. Yeah, I just wonder if this is something that Bickerstaff is going to want to continue to do, if moving Cade out to the wing defensively is something that Bickerstaff wants to continue to do, that kind of rules out Fontecchio. And it does shift it more to Hardaway and Beasley, which is interesting. Asar can guard down, matchup dependent. I'd almost rather he stay out on the wing and guard forwards though more often. So it's going to be really interesting when Asar Thompson comes back. But what'd you think about Jalen Duren? Let's do the other third year before maybe we do a little bit on Malik Beasley and the game that he had. What'd you think of Duren offensively, defensively? Big takeaways.
For sure. I mean, I thought we saw a lot of the same from Jalen Duren offensively. I mean, a ton of dunks, helping out around the rim. He ended with 13 points and 13 boards, 4 assists, 2 turnovers. So a lot of good things there. I thought as a pick and roll partner, he looked pretty good as well. Just a lot of what we know Jalen Duren thrives at. And I thought he even showed some flashes defensively in the first half. The second half was a little bit of a different story. Like Indiana made some changes. They kept going to Miles Turner and he just went crazy to start the third quarter. And it seemed like Indiana was trying to exploit Jalen Duren or just like the Pistons in general with that mismatch they have. Like in the preseason, the one game where Duren struggled was against the Bucks, where they had Brook Lopez, and they kind of did the same thing to him. So I think those situations where he is guarding a 5-man who can stretch out and knock down some shots, he'll be put into some difficult scenarios, and he needs to make an improvement there. I mean, he got switched out in the fourth quarter, and it resulted in a pretty poor foul that I think it was Mathurin ended up going to the line for 3 free throws. So that wasn't great. I mean, I think I saw a lot of what I expected from Jalen Duren, and like really where we need him to improve is as a defender. And I thought he showed some things in the first half that were pretty good and signs of improvement. But then the second half, and maybe it was just trying to go the full 48, like the whole team is having issues with, and just matchup wise struggling with that, which I mean, if the other team spots a weakness, they're going to try to go at it. So hopefully he can show some improvement there. So it's not just such an easy keep going to it, and it results in a run. I want to say as a whole, as a unit, I didn't think the Pistons were good defensively in the second half. So it's not just Jalen Duren. I just think in general, especially when you have a center who can shoot threes, he's going to struggle with it. And it's like, how is JB Bickerstaff? What's he going to do to make up for that? Which is tough right now because you obviously want to trust him in those moments, but maybe it at the end of the game you have to do like an offense defense kind of thing, which isn't ideal, but I don't know. I feel like there's more to come there, and I hope we see it. There were some signs that there was some improvement there, but overall some signs for concern too, that things that we noticed last season as well.
Yeah, I mean this was kind of a tough Durant game. Look, you saw what he does well. Okay, 13 rebounds, 9 of them defensive. That's really great. You need that. You need that. 13 points on only 4 field goal attempts. Obviously, all of those were right around the rim. He went 5 of 6 from the free throw line. You love that. That's really good. He was an excellent pick and roll player with Cade Cunningham. Both Cade and Ivy both individually got him a couple of really nice drop off passes that he finished. I thought at least 2 of his offensive rebounds were really impactful. And then, in terms of improvements, I'll say I noticed him running the floor harder on offense in transition. It wasn't consistent, but there were a couple times I noticed that he did. One time he ran extremely hard, caught up to Tobias Harris actually as Harris was getting ahead. He kind of had a 1-on-2 situation, kicked it right back to Duren as he about crossed the free throw line, and Duren got a really nice dunk. So I loved seeing that. I thought when he was in drop coverage, his hands were better. Again, it wasn't consistent, but his hands weren't always down like they were, or at least like it seemed like they were last year. He was being a little bit more active in that drop coverage, and actually in the fourth quarter, he got kind of a ticky-tack foul for a reach in when he was playing drop, and I actually thought it was a really, really nice possession out of him. I hope we can see more of that. But then on the other end of things, again, 0 stocks, which was a trend we saw from last year. So no blocks, no steals.
2 blocks as a team, by the way.
One of them was Isaiah
Tobias,
Stewart.
And then Isaiah Stewart had one too.
Yeah, Stewart blocked a dunk that was actually a lot of fun. That was a nice block. That was a really nice block. Look, so I was trying to take notes specifically for Jalen Duren's defense when things were either very good or very bad. I was kind of leaving the neutral stuff on its own. So of the about 10 things that I noted, 7 of them were rather negative. So like you mentioned, he did have a really nice stop on Miles Turner. This was a nice defense offense possession back to back for him, where he stops Turner on the baseline, runs the floor, gets a dunk. That was great. And then I mentioned the active hands that he got kind of a ticky-tack foul on. Didn't love that. But then the problem is just awareness. So this is why you and I had talked all offseason that it's not just that he needs to have a higher level of effort, right? The problem is he's reacting late and he's not seeing what's in front of him. So his closeouts were late. In the last 2.5-ish minutes of the game, he allowed, like on his own, he allowed 3 open 3-pointers that all went in. That's just in the last 2.5 minutes. He also lost Miles Turner twice in transition. Only one of those ended up being a 3. But those are just X-outs, right? So the Pacers got a rotation, swung the ball, and Duren was the last guy to move. And it's the guy that he should have rotated up to put a hand up on is the one that nails the 3. You can't have that. You mentioned the foul on Benedict Mathurin. That was a switch, and it was just an ill-advised closeout. That was not good. He had a hands-down closeout against Pascal Siakam, and Siakam didn't take advantage of it. He just kind of dribbled for a little bit, and then he kicked it out to the wing, and then Duren just kind of hovered there around the baseline, and a guy cut right behind him for an open layup. So, it's this awareness stuff that really concerns me, and for as many improvements that he thought he made. Like I'm happy with the way he ran the floor. I think he got better with keeping his hands up in drop coverage. So those are positives. And of course, he's a fantastic rebounder and a great pick and roll player. So like with all those good comes this bad. Like it wasn't just that the Pacers were leaning into Miles Turner as a 3-point shooter, just like in the preseason it wasn't just the Bucks saying Brook Lopez go shoot threes. Like there is some fundamental issues here that go deeper than effort. And so you got the full Jalen Turner experience against the Pacers. I guess is the short response to that I made very long.
This question from Jonathan Schwartz in the chat is pretty interesting to me. Like he says, can anyone explain why Turner gets so open against the Pistons? He tore them up this year. Wes, I want to know like what is the ideal defensive possession where a team with a stretch five is running a pick and roll, the big leaks out beyond the perimeter? Because it just seems to me that when Duran stays, there's just so much separation and he can't make it up. So I guess like what does he or just like a big in general need to do to limit those open looks that other teams have been getting against the Pistons?
Well, it's really tough in drop. So if you're playing against a pick
Yeah.
and roll big who can pick and pop, if you have a guy like Duran who you really are hesitant to get out on a switch, like you don't really want him hedging high or hedging flat. You don't want him literally switching out onto a guard. So he is kind of forced into that drop big roll, and that naturally is going to have him further back from the action, right? If the pick and roll, if the actual screen's happening up at the 3-point line on the wing, he's a couple feet below the screen setter, so he can try to contain the ball handler as the guy guarding the ball gets over the screen and gets back in front. So in those cases, if you got a guy that's going to pop, that's killer. If it's happening in the corner, moving towards the middle, so that the big is kind of popping back out to the sideline to the corner, that would technically in that case, you would want some active hands and maybe playing up on help from the guy guarding a player in the corner. If we're completely ISO'd on that side, it's just empty and you've overloaded the weak side away from the action. Again, now you're just kind of screwed. So like the answer with pick and pop bigs, in my opinion, is don't play drop, hedge up pretty hard, push the ball handler back in a way to give your big time to recover. You see Isaiah Stewart do this pretty well. I actually thought he was very effective against Miles Turner against the Pacers. And it was because he never really hedged hard into a trap, but he did stretch the ball handler out and didn't let the guy turn the corner, which by playing drop, you naturally have to. You have to let him turn the corner so you could kind of like let it come to you and play some contain. So by forcing that ball handler to extend the play a little bit, it just gives Stewart more time to get back and get a hand up. So yeah, it is really, really tough. You are absolutely right that stretch bigs are not a great matchup for Duran. And I don't think it's necessarily because he can't move well on the perimeter. Maybe that's part of it. But the bigger part is just he's a drop big, and that's a lot of ground to cover on your own.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how you make up for it. Like what can the guy on the wing do to potentially help, but at the same time, like if you're sending even more help, it's just like you're creating another open look somewhere else, and it's just a quick swing. So yeah,
well, like I said, the problem's really when it's an empty side. Like that is when it's at its worst. If you do have a guy in the corner, or if you are initiating this from like the top of the key, you need the guy on the wing to lift, kind of play two. You're playing a zone to give Duran time to get back. That's a really tough task, right? That's hard to do. But pick and rolls create advantages just by there being a pick and roll. So that happens. That's just part of it. But that is the literal answer. You need someone out on the wing that's playing two. I'm playing the corner. I'm playing the wing. I'm watching the ball handler's eyes, and I'm making sure that I'm giving Duran, in this case, time to get back. But I'm also not going to let the ball go to the corner and burn myself, right? So free safety sort of position, really tough spot. But that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I guess just to look at the bright side of it, like it was not an easy matchup. I don't think it's an easy matchup for for any team. Like the Pacers were one of the top offenses last year for a reason. So hopefully I mean, who knows when we're going to see it with the Pistons schedule. And I mean, I know they play the Knicks, so then you have to deal with Cat. So yeah, maybe we'll see what it looks like in different matchups that are better suited toward his game. So I think if you want to take positives, I mean, it wasn't great in the second half, but those things you called out, like I think there were some flashes in the first half that show he's working on it. It'll take some time, hopefully not too much time, but yeah, just got to find a way to make up for it if the matchup does really go at Duren in that drop coverage situation.
I do just want to say too, like Miles Turner had a great game, and yeah, Duren was part of that, but Jalen Duren was not the reason that Miles Turner had a great game. Miles Turner is a really, really good player. He, for a big, I think he shot like 8 threes. He had 9 rebounds, 4 blocks, 20 points. The guy was just unreal against the Pistons. So yeah, Jonathan Schwartz saying he always goes off against Detroit. Yeah, absolutely true. But I think he's been an all-star. If not, maybe he should have been by now. Miles Turner is a great player. I really like his game, and it's not entirely on Duren that he went off. That's all I want to say here.
Yeah.
It's not JD's fault. He didn't help, but it's not his fault.
100%. I had a little, like, when that first stretch of the third quarter was going on, I had a little bit of PTSD in terms of what happened against the Bucks in the preseason. And I was texting a buddy who was at the game, and I was like, oh, okay, I see the halftime adjustment was to go at Jalen Duren and give Miles Turner some threes. And he was like, I think Miles Turner is just going crazy right now. So that brought me back a little bit. So yeah, interested to see, like, he's not going to have to deal with that every night. And it's a tough matchup regardless, just because of who the player is. And that's why basically every team in the league wants that kind of player.
Let's do one more thing from this game and then get into a couple of questions from our live audience here. But let's just talk about that last 2.5 minutes. It didn't, that's not literally, I guess, what lost them the game. They only lost by 6. So any 3 baskets at any point earlier in the game could have won them this game. But the last 2.5 minutes was kind of ugly. So Cade Cunningham gets a nice little spin on Pascal Siakam, kind of that fading hook shot through the middle of the lane. Really pretty play. Pistons go up 1. The Pacers go down. They get a bucket. All right. So the Pistons then miss on the next possession. So I'll just read out. This is possession by possession what happened. We're down 1 point. They need to get some stops here. Duren misses an X out. Mathurin hits a 3. We're now down 4. Ivy takes a really ill-advised elbow jump shot. It was early in the clock. I didn't love the shot. And then it's brutal on the other end. Pascal Siakam kind of has that run out dunk. Now we are down. We're at this point, I think we're down 4. Oh no, apologies. They're down 6. Cade Cunningham on the other end hits 2 free throws, back down 4. Duren fouled Mathurin on that 3. He made 2 of those free throws. Then Beasley gets some free throws, only makes 1. Pistons are down 5. They do get a stop. There's a really nice one more pass from Jaden Ivey to Tobias Harris out in the corner. Harris misses the 3, but Ivey gets a charge on the other end, so that was great. Yeah. Next possession after that charge, Jalen Duren gets fouled, makes both free throws. Pistons are down 3. There's less than a minute left. They need a stop, and then Duren misses the X out on Therese Halliburton. Hallie makes that killer 3. That's the ball game. So, I mean, they went from down 1 to just needing 1 or 2 stops in a row in a bucket to they were down 6 with, and at that point, a pretty insurmountable lead for the Pacers. So I don't know. I mean, it was an ugly stretch there. What are some takeaways from you on that?
Yeah, I just thought they got cold at the wrong time, and I mean there were things that happened that before that led up to that. You just don't want to be in that situation, and it felt like there were times where they couldn't, like, the offense just stagnated for a few minutes, like a couple minutes at a time, and it just happened here. And like the worst case, that Ivy like mid range that you mentioned, I thought was a really weird take. It was one of those when he put it up, I was
It
like,
was a
okay, if
bad shot. I mean, I'm the biggest Ivy fan you're gonna find. That was a bad shot.
yeah, I thought that was strange, and also that three in the corner that Tobias miss was kind of a killer there. I mean, that would have got them back into within 2 points. So I mean, you just don't want to be in that situation. Like Harris couldn't really get things going at the end there, but neither really could anyone else. You got to the line a bit, which helped certainly. I just felt like it was a collapse that was kind of coming. Like the offense looked good, and then you run into a few stretches where it's not, and the Pacers are a team where that can't happen. So it's tough to keep up with. Like shots aren't gonna consistently fall always, but um yeah, you just needed a few like clutch buckets that didn't happen. Some of them were, it was pretty like self-inflicted overall, I thought, but um yeah, just in general, I thought it was simple as they got cold at the wrong time. But it I don't think they lost the game fully because of that. There were things that happened that led up to that. And a run in the last few minutes would have made up for it. But I just think they just weren't able to close it out, which happens. It's just a bummer that it happened at the time and in the game that it did happen, in which was a very winnable game.
It's tough, right? I mean, like we keep saying, this is a really, really young basketball team, and I'm right there with you. They just got cold there at on the offensive end. I mean, they went to their veterans for the most part. It was outside of that Ivy pull up. It's Malik Beasley, it's Cade, and it's Tobias Harris getting opportunities. Jalen Duren kind of got fouled, I think, on a dump off from Cade, if I'm remembering correctly. So even that one was going through Cade. Like that's what you want. That's what you want to see. It's Cade Cunningham, and then it's your steady veterans who been there, done that, and they're great 3-point shooters. And they were just all cold, right? They were all cold, and that really didn't help. And then on the defensive end, this is another one where, like, I wish Stewart was out there instead. This isn't Jalen Duren did not lose them the game, but everything except Siakam's dunk was on him. The every point that they gave up, it was during this stretch. It was going against Jalen Duren outside of that Pascal Siakam dunk, and at the same time, Isaiah Stewart was bad offensively this
Hmm.
game. It was a weird game from him on that end. I thought he played really well defensively. We mentioned that block dunk that he had. I thought he was effective against Miles Turner. He was probably the best communicator on the floor. And then at the same time, he was so passive offensively. He only had 2 points. I think he had a weird turnover where he just overthrew Cade. Yeah, no, he had two turnovers. One of them was Cade posting up and Stewart just chucked it out of bounds. Not a banner day from him on the offensive end. So like, man, if you're JB Bickerstaff, that's just a tough spot. Duren got you 2 points, so you take that, right? That's good. And then he was harmful on defense. I'm not confident Isaiah Stewart would have gotten any points. I bet he would have been better on defense, but like it feels like a lose-lose. Like I don't think either of those guys is generating a win here. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there was a right answer.
Yeah, I think Stewart got a little maybe like nervous when there were a few situations where he had to put the ball on the floor and kind of make something happen. And I mean, we know that's not his strong suit. Yeah, I thought it was really
Some of that was
strange.
self-inflicted, though. There was at least 2 3-point attempts where I thought he should have put it up. He waited too long. He was thinking
Mhm.
too much. And then that forced him to put the ball on the floor, and it got kind of ugly after that. There were a couple others where like the Pacers pressured all the guards at one point and forced him to bring the ball up the court, like legitimately bring the ball up the court
Yeah.
one time, and that was bad too. Like so, it's not all on him, but there were a couple where it's just he just needed to let the three go.
For sure, I agree. It was, I mean, I'm not sure if we're gonna talk about Simone Fontecchio a little bit, but I thought he was weirdly
Yeah.
passive from three as well. So it wasn't just him. I mean, maybe it was first game jitters, but you would like to see some of those guys be a little bit more aggressive. I guess what made me nervous about Stewart is that he was getting the looks and he wasn't taking them because it seems like he's still going to get those looks from three, and you just gotta put faith in your shot and put it. I mean, even Ron Holland put up three pointers yesterday. He didn't hit on any of them. But I think when you have the look, it's the right look. Just try not to do too much. And maybe he was told something that we don't know of, but overall, I feel like there's not going to be many games this year where Isaiah Stewart only puts up two shots and like doesn't even get to the line at all, other than Marcus Sasser, who played 3 minutes. That's the lowest field goal attempts, and even Duran only took four. So it was strange overall. I mean, like you said, I thought he looked good defensively. It was just a weird game overall on offense from him.
Well, let's stick on that thought line then. This is from our guy Bobby Buck. It says, "What do you guys think the plan is with Isaiah Stewart offensively? Because it can't be what it was last night." And what do you think? What do you think?
I mean, agree 100%. Like, I'm sort of second guessing myself because I feel like the plan has to be to get him 3 to 4 3-point attempts a game. And then hopefully he can also fight down low for rebounds, get some tip ins and things like that. Hopefully he's not forced to be in situations where he has to handle the ball, because I just don't think that's the player he's going to be. But I mean, hey, like in the same vein as we don't know if he was told something like they don't want that three, like maybe after that game, JB and the rest of the coaching staff told him, like, no, like we want you to take those, and it can be something that'll be changed in game two. So I think teams are still going to get him open looks and everything. I hope he gets a bit more opportunity, because he just didn't get that. Some of it was him passing up on the opportunity, but overall I just thought he wasn't like put in places to really make things happen towards his strong suit on offense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I thought he was very hesitant. There were at least two open threes that he waited so long they were no longer open. One of them he attempted, he missed. The other one he puts the ball on the floor, and things kind of go haywire from there. The one thing though that I was wondering. So I was wondering this as the game was progressing. Um, we look at the starting lineup. All right, the starting lineup: Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey. We've been talking about this all offseason. Jalen Duren is option number 5. Okay, the center is option number 5. And we see that. He took 4 field goal attempts. He did shoot 6 free throws, so you could kind of call that like 7 opportunities to put the ball in the basket, right? That's still the last out of the starting unit. And then you go to the bench, and it's Fontecchio, it's Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart, Malik Beasley, and then 3 minutes of Marcus Sasser, which, as an aside, that was really weird. Jaden Ivey wasn't in foul trouble yet.
He
I
got the
was so
brawny
confused.
minutes.
He did. Yeah. I thought for a second that we weren't going to get the stagger that we've been seeing
Me
all
too.
preseason. It's like, whoa, what is happening? And then he's out after the first quarter. It's like,
JB just decided
whatever.
to mess with us. I don't know. I'll be interested to see if that
JB
stretch
Bickerstaff was hell bent on a 10-man rotation tonight. That's what we learned from this game. But anyway, going back. So point is, of the four guys that really got bench minutes, Isaiah Stewart is option number 4 again, and he gets 0 minutes with Jalen Duren. So I don't think that there was any of his 17 minutes where Isaiah Stewart was anything more than the 5th option offensively. I wonder if part of this might just be schematic. If JB just really does not want his offense to run through his bigs, he just wants his bigs to be finishers. Like, yeah, Isaiah Stewart was hesitant. Was he hesitant because, like you said, maybe he was told something? Maybe it's, you're not the guy that needs to be getting 5 threes a night. Maybe you should only be taking 2 or 3, right? And now he's too hesitant. He could have had 2 or 3 threes against the Pacers, but he was overthinking. And then you add on top of all this, this is a position switch. We do have to note that. I mean, it's back to his natural position, but it is still different than what he played last year. So maybe that's a factor as well. But long story short, I just wonder if this is not an offensive system that's going to feature centers, at least this year.
Yeah. That's very fair. I mean, I don't want to just base one game and say Isaiah Stewart.
It's the first game of the season, Blake. We have to overreact.
We
have to.
I understand. But yeah, if this is a trend that we notice, I mean, you can just go down the box score at the field goal attempts, like you mentioned, Wes, and Duren and Stewart are what stands out to you, really. So yeah, I mean, hopefully he does get more opportunities near the rim, whether it's off an offensive rebound or something like that. But yeah, I feel like it very well might be the case that this offense just isn't trying to make things happen for Isaiah Stewart, which, I mean, if he's just your defensive center that you put in when you need to, he's still going to get a healthy amount of minutes, I think, no matter what. That maybe that's just how it's going to be. It's kind of ironic, the fact that JB was coaching 2 big lineups in Cleveland, but maybe that's his preference. He did say that he doesn't normally play 2 bigs, and it was sort of just based on the roster that he was given, but he also had Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. So it is interesting. It definitely stands out. I just want to see how if this continues over the first 5 to 10 games.
Yeah, me too. Let's get to this next one, and then we'll wrap things up. This is from our guy Camille. Says Toby, Tech, and Beasley shot 3 of 14 from 3. So I wanted to focus on this, and I want to focus on those last 2 names because I think we could just pretty confidently say Tobias Harris was off from 3. He otherwise had a pretty nice night. 6 of 13 from the floor, 13 points, 36 minutes. I wish he was a little bit more aggressive on the boards, but whatever. Pascal Siakam didn't go off, so I thought this was a really nice night overall for Tobias Harris. But Simone Fontecchio and Malik Beasley, there was some weirdness that went on with those two. So what did you see from them in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I guess the weirdness sticks out to me the most for Fontecchio. I thought he was more passive than I ever noticed him being, which I'm not really sure why. There was one, he had a pretty wide open look from 3 and he decided to pass it up, and I wasn't
wide open in the corner. No one near him. And he held the ball for 4 seconds too. It wasn't like he hesitated for a second and the guy came, he just sat there paralyzed.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder, is it, I don't remember who exactly was on the floor at that time, but I wonder if it's something that's being said is we would rather get the ball to our guards in movement, and he was looking for a Jaden Ivey or something like that. But I think Fontecchio, if you're comparing Fontecchio, Isaiah Stewart, and I mean, even Tobias Harris, I'd want Fontecchio to be taking those threes Malik Beasley, I think he was just a little bit off from three. I mean, he was still 2 for 6. He wasn't god awful by any means, but he's the guy on this roster I trust to make down a three more than anyone else, honestly. And like I think he's capable of it. I liked how he tried to do a little bit more. He got that and one in the first half, I believe. That was a nice play. So I don't know. I think like I honestly thought Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. would be a little bit more flip flopped with their attempts and everything like that. But the thing that really stands out to me is like Fontecchio. I'm hoping it was just an off night, but I hope he's a bit more, he gets more threes up, and I hope he's a bit more confident and not really passing him up, because the ones he passed up I thought were the right look.
Yeah, really, really odd night from him. I'm leaning to thinking it was just an off night, and there's no reason to really think otherwise for him. Like, he was just a little too hesitant. Maybe he missed an
He
early
got into
shot.
foul trouble too.
Yeah, he did. He did. Yeah, he had 3 in only 15 minutes. So maybe that's part of it.
It was 3 in the first half, I believe, too.
Yeah, yeah, great point. Great point. I mean, that could absolutely get into a shooter's head. The thing with him is he played much better all preseason. So yeah, fingers crossed, right? That's just an off night and this isn't a trend we see. He's not a guy that can really afford to be hesitant out there in his, 15 to 20 minutes a game that he's going to get. Oddly enough, I was more worried about Malik Beasley, not because he was 2 of 6 from 3. That's just an off night. It was the off the dribble stuff that you mentioned positively. So we kind of disagree about that.
Yeah, I just before, sorry to
uh,
interrupt. I just thought
Go ahead.
before,
Yeah.
like not watching Malik Beasley super closely. I mean, when he was with the Bucks, you see him a bunch of times, but I thought of him as more of like a one-dimensional, like 3-point shooter. And I guess just the fact that like he's trying to do other stuff, I was like, okay, like that's kind of cool. But like what you mentioned about maybe like that's just not who he is, like maybe that's the case. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it's all right. It's not necessarily that it's not who he is. I think he can do it. There were a couple of reps that it looked really nice. He had one really, really solid pick and roll that ended up in about an elbow pull-up jumper that looked super smooth. I loved that. It was just the frequency. I'd have to go back and look, but of the 13 shots that he took, I have to say it feels like the majority of those were self-created, and that is not something that I think really plays to his strengths. I thought the amount of off the dribble stuff that he was asked to do really showed up in his efficiency from the floor. I believe the 2 makes from 3 he had were catch and shoot as well. You add the one pull up mid range jumper that was on him, that was self created. That's 3 out of his 5 makes for the whole game. Like, one of them was an and one off a really nice cut. So there's another not self created. Malik Beasley is just not a guy that I was expecting to have that much ball handling duty in game 1. Even after the preseason, we did see him initiate every now and then, but it wasn't to that extent. So again, I wonder if maybe this was more of a product of how the Pacers were pressuring Cade. They forced the ball out of Cade's hand early in possessions, especially in the first half. Jaden Ivey was someone that maybe not necessarily benefited from it, but he's the one that got a lot of those ball handling reps, and so was Malik Beasley. So I'm hopeful that this isn't as much a trend and it was more just how the Pacers were playing them, but it was interesting nonetheless, and I do really think that the amount that he self-created did show up in his percent from the floor.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be featured, and I don't mean like primarily featured, but I think he's gonna be a big part of this team and this offense. And I mean, hopefully, like
Real quick, that was why I loved him off the bench instead of Tim Hardaway Jr. THJ got 9 shots. This was something you brought up in your bold prediction that he was going to average, not Tim Hardaway Jr., but Beasley was going to average 15 or more points per game this season. Malik Beasley getting 13 shot attempts was only because he came off the bench as a hired gun, and I love that. So I was all in on that part. I thought that was really great.
yeah, that's true. And I mean, like I think he's pretty clearly the best 3-point shooter on this team right now. So I think he needs to maybe it's try to do a little bit less, but in the situations where he's presented with more, I like the fact that he's going for it, but it might not be the best shot or take he can make, which you bring up. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. Like, yeah, if he's never in the starting lineup for this team and he's like that microwave shooter scorer off the bench that every team needs, I mean, I think he's the most likely to be able to pop for 20 of the bench group right now of Stewart, Fontecchio, and Holland. And if you want to throw Sasser in there, it'll be interesting when you throw Asar Thompson back into the mix. But yeah, it was a little bit of a strange game, but I just like overall the type of player and skill set he brings to the roster.
Last point on this potentially being more of an outlier from three performance for this team. The Pistons, as a team, shot 27% from three. They were 9 of 33. Guys that played significant minutes. So sorry, Marcus Sasser, I'm going to exclude your three. Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Simone Fontecchio, Isaiah Stewart, and Malik Beasley. There are only two guys, Ron Holland and Jalen Duren, that are not at least close to league average historically from three. Jaden Ivey would have the worst percentage there, hovering right around 34. But, again, that's only 2% underneath league average, being at about 36. So 27%, yeah, that's probably just an outlier night for guys that got 15 or more minutes, only two of them being legitimately bad shooters. I think we could take that. I think that's a positive moving forward.
For sure. I think a positive, and I think one of the positives that maybe I said from preseason is it just feels like the Cade Cunninghams and the Jaden Ivies of the world have so many more outlets that can help them out if they get into some trouble. I think that's going to be a positive. Like, the team isn't going to shoot 27% from three every night. I think it was overall just getting used to things, and some guys being colder than others, and hopefully they are on any other night. So yeah, overall, just it makes for a better viewing experience too, that there's some players who you can trust to knock down shots on the perimeter when you have a driver that needs a kick out.
Thank goodness NBA basketball is back. This was so fun. It's just so great to actually have real basketball to analyze in depth like this with you. This is a fantastic episode. I'm so excited to see over the next 2 weeks how the things that we talked about here, the good and the bad, because there were plenty of both, which continue, which don't, which new things pop up. It's nice to be back, man. It's nice to be back.
100%. Before we jump off, I have to ask you: we're recording on Thursday night. Are you gonna tune into Wemby tonight?
I hope so. That's my plan. I got
TNT,
two dogs, so
Spurs,
who knows
Mavericks.
what'll happen. But
it'll be cool. I'm interested to see what he does. But shout out to everyone for joining and for throwing your questions and thoughts in the chat. We really appreciate it. Reminder, you can call our phone line and ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is...
Hang on, please do. We haven't got one of these in a while. That's my favorite part whenever we get one. It's so cool. So please, somebody call our phone number.
even to vent about something. I mean, if there's not a question, we probably won't play it on the show, but I can promise you we will listen to it. So feel free to call the number. The number for that is 313-355-2717. Special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. Shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points and liveliness in the chat. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.